Hello and welcome back to a special episode of the Red Tinted Glasses podcast. Special because we've got some positive news despite recent results. A new signing has been announced. Australian footballer Nicolas Milanovic has today, the 15th of May, joined Aberdeen from Australian League side Western Sydney Wanderers. And what better way to get a bit of an insight into our latest signing to be joined by Western City Wonder season ticket holder and Red Tinted Glasses listener, Allan McCarlie. Allan, great to have you on the show for a second time.
Yeah, thanks, Glen. Brilliant to be here, and excellent to have some positive news this morning.
Yeah, especially after last night's result as well. And also thanks to you as well for jumping on after coming back from training. So I know it's nearly 10 o'clock at night in Sydney. So do appreciate you giving up the last few hours of your evening to discuss the Don's latest signing. So maybe just kick us off by giving us a flavour of what we can expect from Nicolas Milanovic.
Yeah, look, I think Nicolas is had a brilliant year or a brilliant last 2 or 3 years at Wanderers, and he's grown into a big part of the Wanderers team. But I think what Aberdeen's getting is someone that can play anywhere across the front line, and he's got a real eye for goal. He's, as everyone probably can see, stats, on FootMob or whatever, he's got sort of 12 and 25 or something. So we don't play so many games over here in the A-League, so it's only sort of 25 games he's played, but he's scored 12 goals and he's got quite a few assists. Heavily left-footed, but often is used off the right. Wanderers can sometimes play that sort of 4-4-2 or a 4-2-2 sort of formation, and then quite often he'll play central, maybe off the striker. So I would think Jimmy will use him on the right, where he can come in on his left. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's used off the front as well. And certainly he's a great finisher. Head, left foot, right foot. He's got an eye for goal, which I think we need up there at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly on the basis of the last few games as well, but good to see that he does have an eye for goal. And as you said, 12 goals this season in the 26 games, 6 assists, 9 last season, 5 assists. Also sees picks up a few bookings as well. So that kind of fits the mold of Jimmy Talene players that are rough and ready and can get stuck in as well. You've mentioned there that potentially the preferred positions out on the right, cutting in from the left. I thought an interesting snip from the club's statement on the signing was put out as a left-footed, right-sided winger. He is the profile of a player we don't currently have in the squad right now. Maybe saying something about our current wingers or the likes of Ryan Duncan, and who's currently out on loan, maybe doesn't have a future. I know there will be some people that will say, what chances now do some of the youth players hold when we get a signing like Nicolas coming in? But I guess as someone that's seen him in the flesh for the last 2-3 seasons, it is a player that by all accounts we should be excited for, because certainly the talk in the Australian press is the rumoured figure is being quoted as a steal from an Aberdeen perspective.
Yeah, look, I think that's the bargain you get down under, and that's why you've seen quite a lot of players come, because, look, number one, the exchange rate favours Aberdeen, and us paying, look, I don't know exactly what the final fee is, but Wanderers have announced that it's a record for them, but probably in terms of worldwide money, it's not a lot of money, but a few £100,000 is probably decent money for Wanderers, and for us. Look, I think you're getting someone, it's a little bit typical of maybe the way we've done business the last few years. Bojan, maybe a little bit Duke as well, went down that track, buying people that are a little bit more than potential, that are a little bit more that 22, 23. They're going to give you something, and then potentially it's a fairly low risk with a high reward. And I think you could see this going this way. He's right on the cusp of getting an Australian call-up, but I expect he'll potentially get it before he plays for Aberdeen. I would imagine, sort of over this next round of games, it might come. So all going well, he'll perform for us for a number of years and maybe lift some trophies, but then be sold on for a mega money.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, I think I actually saw a report this evening that, well, evening for you, that he's been called up to the warm weather camp in Dubai that the Socceroos are holding. And despite, I think, what Wanderers are saying that he'll join the club immediately, he won't join until June when the club returns for pre-season training. So he'll have a little bit of a break because, of course, your season just ended. Shorter than I'm sure you'd have liked at the weekend in the playoffs, didn't it?
Yeah, there's a couple of weeks to go. There's still semi-finals, and so the season finished 2 weeks ago, and then we have the sort of top six system, and Wanderers went out the sort of first hit. So there's still another couple of weeks before we hit the grand final. But I actually, it's funny. Nicolas is actually I've got to get this right. He's the cousin of my nephew's girlfriend. So there's a little bit inside there, and I know we sort of unofficially spoke a number of weeks ago, and we sort of knew that this was a done deal. So I reached out to check if he was going to make his way over for the cup final. Not so much to play, although it would be nice at this stage, but at least to be there. But no, apparently he's having some time off, and he's planning to get over to Scotland, I think sometime in June, probably a couple of weeks before reporting back. I would say, to settle in, but I know he's desperate and so looking forward to sort of going to settling into Scotland.
Yeah, no, and I think it's exciting, certainly after last night, to have or hear of a player excited to come that's got a bit of potential. But of course, some fans will point to the success rate of signings coming over from the A-League. Even Aberdeen fans will point to the last signing that we made in James McCarlie, although I feel that's a little bit harsh given his injury record. Where do you see the kind of biggest differences between the A-League and the Scottish Premiership? And is there any concerns for you with how Nicholas's game might adapt to the Scottish game?
Look, as you said, he gets bookings. He's happy to get stuck in. He's happy to put himself about. Look, I think we tend to focus sometimes on the players that maybe haven't done so well, but I think there's plenty that have. The players who are a little bit similar to him, that sort of maybe in the final third, you've got guys like, I don't know if you remember Daniel Arzani, who went to Celtic, but then he didn't get very many opportunities and he got a bad injury. And look, to be honest, he's actually back in Australia playing, and he ripped us apart in the semi-final last week. He's playing really well again. But I just don't think, maybe the injury didn't get the opportunities. And then you had Marco Tilio, which is arguably was the sort of standout player a couple of years ago in the A-League, and he also went to Celtic, but he really didn't get an opportunity. Whereas the other guys who have gone to Hearts or Hibs or Ross County or the other clubs, they get opportunities and they get time to adjust and sort of then prove themselves. And I agree with McGarry. I think there was a player in there, and then he got caught up with the maybe change of managers and bits and pieces. But I still think maybe he didn't get enough of an opportunity. But I still think there's a player in there, and he probably got injured at the wrong time because they both had to move Shinnie out into that area, and maybe McGarry would have done a job at this current time. But yeah, look, I think going to the bigger club, I think he's done the right thing coming to Aberdeen, and I really hope Jimmy gives him opportunity. I think, like I said just before, like you're saying, a right-sided player who can cut in, I think that's right. Like when we go out on the right to say Morris, we all know that he's going to accelerate down the right line and cross it, and when he does it, we get disappointed. But anything else he does is usually fairly negative, and he just sort of passes it inside or passes it back. So I think Milanovic is a little bit more of a complete player. He can probably do both. I think he's a little bit more developed, a bit more of a complete player. Even before, like we were talking off air about Keskinen, and we love Keskinen in terms of the energy he brings and that direct running. But it's so frustrating, this final ball, his final decision making. I think Nicholas is a little bit further down the track and a little bit more polished than that. And I think that's something that would attract Jimmy. So sort of going back to sort of what you're saying, we're probably getting someone who's ready to get into the starting 11 quite quickly and not be, a sort of squad player.
Yeah, and I guess as well as possibly the announcement of this signing potentially means the likes of Jeppe Ockels actually doesn't get a deal if we've got someone that is kind of ready to be challenging the likes of Shaden Morris on that right-hand side. And a couple of questions, maybe people will look to compare the two, kind of just based off of your comments there, that Nicolas is maybe more ready to be starting games, obviously doing that for Western Sydney Wanderers just now, rather than being the impact sub that we've seen Shaden be. But kind of off the more recent games where I've felt Shaden's kind of lacked a kind of defensive side to his game, what's Nicolas Milanovic's defensive side like in terms of for when he's here helping out Alexander Janssen? Would he be suited to that?
I think, again, like the yellow cards and the sort of, he'll get stuck in and he'll get back. Technically, 1v1, he's not a defender, right? And that's probably, we don't want him to be a defender, but, the more games like this morning or even at Ibrox the other night, we need our wingers to be able to get into a position where they can delay the forward pass, or in times where Jensen is out there and overlapping, we need them to drop back and be that point. So in terms of work rate, no problem. Technically, at the end of the day, he's not a defender. If we had to go and play wing backs, I don't think he's a wing back either. Whereas, Morris was used like that a little bit, but he's definitely not a wing back. I would say if he's not out on the wing, he's playing somewhere sort of off the front. Jimmy sometimes, if he plays Papi and this bit, he could play in that sort of pair if he wanted to do that.
Can he play as a striker?
He could, but I don't know, not so much a target striker. Certainly as a finisher, I still think you'd probably need a target. What's going to happen in that space, I'm not quite sure. But I think he could play there. Is he a 10? I was sort of thinking about this because we've seen, we've been missing that 10 since Clarkson's dropped a little bit deeper. Could he be that sort of 10 position in that link up? I'm not sure. I would really see if Jimmy plays more of a 4-4-2, which he sort of does sometimes, then he could sort of play in that sort of forward line, or like you said, he could play on the left as well. He could go on that side if we're looking at getting crosses in the box. So he could interchange across the front.
Maybe something a bit more beneficial that you could change the wingers if you go Topi and Milanovic next season, that yes, they're both going to be on the preferred side, but to potentially confuse opposition defenders, because a lot's been accused of Jimmy Tolina not having a plan B, and maybe switching that wingers is the start of his plan B for next season. But kind of a final question for you, Alan, what's been the biggest difference this season compared to last season that's made Nicolas Milanovic stand out? Because as I said, he's had a fairly solid return last year, both in terms of the goals and assists, but there seems to be a lot of talk that he's really come on to a game this year. So for you, as someone that attends the game, what have you noticed as being the biggest difference?
Look, as a team, we're better, and we've finished higher up the ladder than we have. We've had a couple of changes in coaches the last year or two. We sort of finished outside the top 6 for too many years, whereas they stuck with the coach sort of this year. And often in Australia, we're allowed to sign, so there's a salary cap for anyone that doesn't know, but that you can sign marquee players. And then quite often, coaches will sign, or clubs will sign marquee players because they think they're getting something better. And maybe a number of years ago, we could afford to sign and we had more money. But these marquee players are now going to the Middle East, or they're going to the MLS. They're not really coming to Australia. Look, albeit we did sign Juan Mata, but in the second half of the season, he never started and he barely got minutes, because the coach sort of trusted a lot of young players, and he felt like the energy that he got from young players and mainly young Australian players he sort of wanted to give them a chance. And then what happened is they sort of made this sort of bond together, and then they went on a run. I think they went something like 14 unbeaten towards the end of the season. So I think a steady, a living, a coach that sort of gave a bit of belief to a squad of players, and got the chemistry right. And then he sort of, I think he felt comfortable. I know he spoke in his farewell video, which I just had a bit of a look at before, about people believing in him. A couple of years ago, he was down in Melbourne playing for Western United, but he was a squad player. But when he came to Wanderers, not just the main coach, but the coaches behind the scene, sort of made him believe that he could be a starting player and not a squad player, that he was good enough. And then he's developed his game. And then it sort of came, that solid foundation of a coach that believes in you, players around you that sort of have the same sort of style, if you like, and the same focus, and then you just flourish, go and do your stuff, take shots when the shots is on, beat a player when it's on, and give him that freedom. And yeah, he's done it. And now obviously, from his point of view, he's making that sort of graduation, if you like, into European football, which is what they all want. And I know he made comment to that as well. I also noted when I was watching the video, he got quite emotional as he was sort of thanking coaches and thanking family towards the end of that video. And I think that shows the sort of humble sort of guy that he is. He's very appreciative of this opportunity and sort of people around him and the family. And I think that'll really, I think that's why Aberdeen hopefully will suit him. And then hopefully he can settle really quickly into the Premier League.
Well, fingers crossed. And as you've said, when we were exchanging messages a couple of weeks ago when this was kind of being touted, you said you think it'll be an exciting signing. That signing's now been announced. And I think Nicolas is now the second Australian to play for Aberdeen since, well, certainly the first one since David Zadrilic. And that was a long time ago. But, said he was a winger, proven end product and an eye for goal. And right now, certainly we need someone with an eye for goal and to kind of help us on next season. But Allan, thank you very much for joining me this Thursday evening for yourself, Thursday lunchtime for us here in the UK, to give us a little bit of an insight into the Dons' latest signing, Nicolas Milanovic. And I'll be back later on this evening with a live episode. Sadly, we have to look back at the events of last night and ahead to that crucial game at Tannadice. But until then, thanks very much to everybody for listening and watching to this episode.